let's go.
Here we go.
We were in the middle of France versus Britain. I don't know how far we went. Each class was different, so tell me when I hit what we were doing.
We got the day. No, we were at number 4. Yeah, number 4. No, we got the William Pitt candidate. Oh, is that one? We got the first 3 words.
Okay, this is what we were doing?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And again, let's list all the great things that might end up on tests. And we have strong military support to Frederick of Prussia. Remember, just going to refresh yourself. So he sent an army down here. Prussia was one of the German states, so that they'd be fighting right against France, hoping that the French would bring some of their French soldiers out of North America.
Good morning, middle school. This is your head of the day, wrong of the day, Paul. I'd like to inform you that this weekend will be a no homework weekend. And in addition to that, I will go around at lunch and decide who has the best dress per grade, and the winner will win an Amazon gift card. And also, each person will get 6 Oreos. So yeah, have a nice day.
Thank you.
Okay, all right.
I'm gonna brag.
Okay, so he went down to send an army over here, hoping that the French would bring some of their soldiers out of the New World. I don't know, for like, please. So that there would be fewer French soldiers over here for William Pitt to kick out so that he can control North America. The speeches to raise morale, the attitude of the British people. After 3 wars, they were thinking, we don't want to fight a 4th war. All that money, all those lives lost, we got nothing out of it. We gave everything back. They don't want to do that again. So William Pitt has to convince them, no, this time we really will kick the French out of here. We will control all of this. Then he has to convince, and this is the one that was so important in what we're going to study in the next little bit about the Revolution. He had to convince the merchants to pay higher taxes, and in exchange for paying higher taxes now in the 1750s and 60s, the British government promises that the merchants after this war will make all kinds of money trading with the original 13 colonies and all the French colonies they're going to take over. So the merchants are supposed to become filthy rich after this. The last thing was sending 2 outstanding commanders to America. See, they were fighting all over the world, and most of the European generals thought the only place for a really important European general to fight is in Europe. If you send over to America or Australia or the Pacific, that's no good. You have to be in Europe. Well, they've done that, and they kept all the best generals over there. And William Pitt said, no, this is what we're after. We need to send a couple of really good generals over there. And when you talk about really good generals, the first Gulf War, where Saddam Hussein was kicked out, Saddam Hussein had the 3rd largest army in the world. And the Americans went in there. Do you know, we had an incredible commander. His name was General Norman Schwarzkopf. Do you know how long it took us to completely defeat the 3rd largest army in the world? 100 hours. 100 hours. That is an amazing general. That's an amazing general. So they said, we have to send a couple of really amazing generals over there. And a man named Jeffrey Amherst, who you will hear his name later, he went and took the fort at Louisburg, which is up here near the mouth of the St. Lawrence River. And again, remember, it's not the St. Lawrence Seaway. That hadn't been built yet. That's a series of locks and dams and such. This is just a river now. The other fellow was named James Wolfe. And James Wolfe was a very good commander. See, the city of, visual aids are so nice. The city of Quebec rests right here. Suppose this is the St. Lawrence River. Here's the city of Quebec. Back here, there's a flat area called the Plains of Abraham, and then there are some really steep cliffs. Well, the French commander, whose name was Louis Montcalm, he said, I don't have to worry about this at all. Nobody could possibly come up these cliffs, and the British like to use their navy, so they're going to attack from the river. I mean, here's the city, here's the river. he put all his defenses up here. And James Wolfe, one of those outstanding commanders, actually took his army off of the ships, marched them back to the cliffs, and in the dead of night, on a dark night, managed to get his army up the cliffs and assembled on the plains of Abraham, on this flat area back here. When the French woke up in the morning, they're still looking this way, waiting for the British ships, and the British army is assembled, ready to attack Quebec from the other side. It was a ferocious fight, and actually, this is the death of Wolfe. It's a very famous painting. This is Wolfe. He was shot. He was killed on the battlefield. Sometimes you get people who hit their peak. I mean, they make their greatest contribution, in this case to the military of Britain, at the same time that they expire. So he died doing this. It was a victory, but they lost him. That leaves Jeffrey Amherst in charge over in America. Well, now using William Pitt's plan, by 1760, the British were winning. The war started in 1756. So by 1760, the British are winning all over the world, not just in North America, but all over the world. In 1762, Spain comes in on France's side. Spain comes in and says, okay, we really hate Britain too, so we want to come in on France's side. And then they had the Treaty of Paris, 1763. This is big. I'm going to say it to you a couple of times. You need to have the date when you list this treaty. You must say the Treaty of Paris, 1763. Because when diplomats, big important people who like to live a good lifestyle get together to negotiate treaties, it takes months or years, and they like to live well. So they don't go to Podunk, Wyoming to sign a treaty. They go to places like London, New York, Paris, Vienna. There have been lots of treaties of Paris. And the reason I want you to have the date is because the Treaty of Paris 1763 ended the French and Indian War. The Treaty of Paris 1783 ended the American Revolution. There was a Treaty of Paris which ended the Vietnam War. So just looking at the United States, you've already got three major treaties that are in our history. So you need to differentiate by having the date. Okay. I think that was it for this slide. Good. All right, there you go. Treaty of Paris, 1763. So what happened in the war? Okay, we'll get the explanation here. It was just France and Britain. Britain's goal was to kick France off the continent. I'm going to take the bottom one first, which they almost did. France, which was a Catholic country, said we need to keep just a couple of fishing islands off Canada. And the British said, no, we can't do that. You have to get all the way out of the New World. And the French said, well, then we will continue to fight. And they needed to have those fishing islands for the same reason Milwaukee has fish fries. Does anybody have any idea why Milwaukee has fish fries? No, it's not just because when they're hungry, they like fish fries. Why do they like to have fish fries on Friday? Okay, there's a lot of Catholics in Milwaukee, and up until just a few years ago, it was part of the religion, one of their rules, that Catholics could not eat meat on Fridays, so they ate fish. Now, France was a Catholic country. Virtually all of them were Catholic, so they had to feed the whole country fish. And some of the greatest fishing in the world is off the coast of Canada. So they said, yeah, we need these fishing islands to feed our people on Fridays because it's that important to us. And when Britain said no, it wasn't just a question of power. It wasn't just a question of being on the continent. To the French, it was a question of So they said, we'll keep fighting if you don't give us the fishing islands because we have to have those for our religion. All right, let's start at the top here. The war ends. That's always the first thing. If you're signing a peace treaty, the first thing you get is peace. Next, Great Britain. GB is Great Britain. Great Britain was given all the land east of the Mississippi. All the land east of the Mississippi. Remember that, I use this now, makes it a little easier. Remember that Britain had been coming in from the east coast and the French had gone down here into the Great Lakes and south. This was the disputed area, so Britain says it's not disputed anymore. We won the war, we get this, all the way over to the Mississippi. You might say, why didn't they take it all? The answer is, it took them 100 years to get over here. They think if they get all the way over there, they're set for a long, long time. So Great Britain gets all the land east of the Mississippi, and New Orleans goes to the Spanish. I'll explain that in just a second. And the Spanish get all the land west of the Mississippi. Yes, I did say Mississippi. Now, imagine this. You have a bottle. I can't turn it upside down because I'm afraid it'll leak. Well, maybe I will. Anyway, if you turn this upside down, all right, we'll try. Okay. You got the flow here. On the east side, this is the Mississippi River. On the east side, you have British land. So the British own right up to the shore, right up to the bank of the Mississippi here. The Spanish own right up to the bank of the Mississippi here. They can each use the river. But down at the bottom, like the cap here, there's the city of New Orleans, which is on both sides of the river, which means the Spanish can sail down the river. Now, boats that go on a river are really flat. They don't go very deep, and so they're no good in the ocean. If you took a river boat out into the ocean, it would just flip over and sink. They need much deeper hulled ships, ships that go way deep in the water. Yes, sir.
About riverboats, didn't get caught up by the invasion of Japan sailed riverboats.
Bad mistake. Bad mistake. So what has to happen is they ride down the river in barges, in flat boats. When they get to New Orleans, they have to unload the barges and put their goods onto seagoing ships, onto bigger ships. Then they can sail off to markets in Europe. The French hated the British. So they said, okay, we'll give you right up to the river, but giving the Spanish the city of New Orleans was like putting a cork in the bottom of the river. They couldn't use it without the permission of the Spanish, and they had just been at war with the Spanish, so the Spanish weren't very friendly to them. The French hoped that that would be just awful for the English, and they did it for one reason. They hated the English. Okay. Great Britain said, okay, wait a minute. Spain gets all this. It's called the Louisiana Territory, which had been claimed by France. Spain gets all this, everything west of the Mississippi, and they get the city of New Orleans. They lost. We ought to get something from Spain because we're Britain. We won. So the Spanish say, okay, you can have the Floridas. You can have what's now Florida along the Gulf Coast here. So the British really did literally have everything from the East Coast all the way over to the Mississippi. You have to understand something, though, about Florida. Raise your hand if you've ever been to Florida. Okay, the Florida you've seen does not exist in nature. The Florida you've seen was built by the United States Army Corps of Engineers. Florida, as it exists in nature, as it existed back then, there's a thin strip of land in the middle where you can build something. There's a little bit on the coasts, and all the rest of it was swamp. It's sort of underwater. And the Army came in and they built dams and they drained places, and they built what you now go to and say, oh, I'm in Florida. You're in something that was kind of built by the Army. Okay, so these are the steps of the Treaty of Paris 1763, the final war is over. France, you can say, is kicked out of the New World. They still managed to keep their couple of fishing islands, but they have no power there, just the ability to catch fish. Now that the war is over, Sir Jeffrey Amherst is in charge over here. I mean, he was the military commander. He's in charge of the military. And he takes a look and says, okay, now we used to have the French. And the French were an enemy, a powerful enemy. So we wanted the Indians to help us. Remember how we won the Indians over? We gave them metal knives and metal axe heads. We gave them muskets. We gave them gunpowder. We gave them musket balls. We gave them all that and made them more powerful so they would help us. Well, now the French are gone. So there are only two groups left here, the natives and the British. So there's only two groups that could really go to war against each other if there were problems, the natives and the British. So Jeffrey Amherst, the British commander, says, I'm not going to supply the natives anymore. I'm not going to give them any more muskets, any more metal knives, any more metal axe heads. Now they'll have to go back to the old ways. But wow, think about that. I saw a movie years ago. It was a great movie. It was a cowboy movie. I can't remember the name of it. I can't remember really much of the plot. What I do remember is one scene. It was at the fort, you know, the cavalry fort they always have in old Western movies. And there were the representatives of the army sitting at the table and the chiefs of the tribes that were going to come in and sign a peace treaty came in and they're all standing in front. And the general who was in charge told them what the conditions of the treaty would be. And one of the chiefs said, no, we'll continue to fight. We won't accept that. And one of the other chiefs reached over and took the bow out of his hand. And he pulled it back, and he pulled it back, and he pulled it back, and finally it snapped and broke in half. And he threw it down at the first man's feet, and he said, my father's bow would have broken my arm before it snapped. We don't even remember how to be Indians. And I thought that was such a powerful scene. Because things change. And remember, 1607, they started getting metal knives and metal axe heads and muskets and musket balls. And it was really accelerated in the last couple of dozen years. Think about this. If the lights went out right now, the electricity went off, and it is not coming back on. Right now, it goes off. Something's happened. The United States no longer will have electricity for the foreseeable future. I have a gun. I have a gun, and I have 12 bullets in my gun. One gun. That's what we have. You can't go home. They're not driving. Okay? You're here. So here we are. I have a gun. I'm responsible for you guys. We got to feed ourselves. I have a gun with 12 bullets. How many of you honestly, don't just say you're a big super stud. How many of you honestly think if I gave you that gun could go out and with one or two bullets kill something big enough for all of us to be fed? Don't, you know, a sixth grader, there's a couple of porky little ones. Okay? If you've never actually hunted, you can put your hand out. You wouldn't be able to do it. Okay? All right? So we've got 4. That's amazingly large. See, because this is the way we hunt nowadays. Mom gets out her credit card, silently walks the aisles of Pick and Slave, looking for the kind of meat she's going to bring home to cook for dinner. Yeah, Pick and Slave. It's called Pick and Slave because it used to be warehouse foods, like Aldi is now, where they just cut open the crate. You got to pick up your own stuff and carry your own stuff. So I've always called it Pick and Slave. Anyway, so the world has changed for us. The world had changed for them too, for the natives. They didn't know how to make arrows that were as true, spears that flew as far, bows that were as powerful, because they had come to rely on the metal tools and the muskets that the British had given them. Therefore, when the British said, yeah, we're not going to give you that anymore, some of the Indians literally began to starve because they couldn't feed themselves. They couldn't hunt anymore. They didn't know how in the same way. How about that? How many of you think that if we didn't have a gun, spear. Anybody think they could make a spear they could bring out a deer with? You're absolutely full of cheese. Okay.
Actually, I'm not.
I can run from all.
All right. Americans like their freedom. And this has been called one of the greatest mistakes in the history of government in the world. And that was the British, after letting the Americans in so many instances govern themselves. After the French and Indian War, when the French were kicked out, the British said, okay, we let you get away with a lot, and we had to be nice with you because you needed to help us with the French, but now, yeah, not so much. Now, we're going to tell you how to manage every aspect of your life. That's called micromanage, every little bit. Okay, I'm going to coach a basketball team this year, so we said, okay, here we go. If I said, let's see here, we're going to have cha-cha. Cha-cha, I want you to bring the ball up. I want you to get the half court and pass to James. That's coaching. If I said cha-cha, I want you to begin with your left foot and a right hand dribble. I want you to take 2 steps. I want you to spin your butt 90 degrees to the left. I want you to switch to your left hand. I want you to go between your legs. Then I want you to grab it with your right hand and dribble here 2 steps. That's micromanaging. I can't get him to do that. I don't know what's going to happen on the court. I can give them a general idea. Hey, this is how you should run your colony. This is the kind of things we want for profit from your colony. Not every little thing of the way people should live, but the British started to do that. Bad mistake. Americans liked their freedoms. Americans began to resent the British for trying to rule us. Okay. There was an Indian leader named Pontiac off in the Indiana, Michigan area. Pontiac was another one of those intelligent Native Americans who tried to form a confederation. He said, I want to have some other Indians help me get these guys out of our lands. So he was quite a problem. And it's called Pontiac's Rebellion. He wanted to push the Europeans out. He wanted to push the colonists out. Well, the colonists themselves fought the war. They didn't ask for any British troops. They didn't ask for any British money. They didn't ask for anything. They just grabbed their guns and they went off and they fought the war and they put down Pontiac's Rebellion. They paid for it themselves. I brought my own bullet, brought my own gun, brought my own clothes and boots. They fought it. They paid for it. But the British were afraid. The British said, oh, no, 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 no. We owe so much money from those 4 wars. We're so deep in debt. We can't afford any kind of an Indian war. This would be horrible. So we don't want this to happen. And they made a law so that the Indians and the colonists wouldn't be near each other. If they're not near each other, they can't fight. And they drew this line, which is pretty much down the top of the Appalachian Mountains. So drew a line down the top of the Appalachian Mountains and they said, colonists, you stay on that side. Natives, you stay on that side. They're not near each other, there can't be a fight. But the colonists, if you remember, take a look over here. They were already near the Ohio River. They were already moving here. People had bought land over here. Sometimes because they wanted to go make their farm. Sometimes they wanted to speculate. You know what a speculator is? What's that? What? No, it's kind of that. A speculator is someone that buys something anticipating that the price of it will go up.
Like a buy Tickle Me Elmo.
Like a what?
Like a Tickle Me Elmo for $5.
Yes, exactly. Tickle Me Elmos went crazy. There was actually, what do you call those things? I don't know, Cabbage Patch Kids. When Cabbage Patch Kids came out, there was such a demand that there was literally, you couldn't buy them in the United States. There was a man to get his daughter a Cabbage Patch Kid for Christmas, flew out of Chicago O'Hare to Europe, went to a store to buy a Cabbage Patch doll, got back on a plane, flew back to Chicago, went home so he would have the doll for Christmas because that was cheaper than get the way he could get one in the United States. Their prices just went crazy. Beanie Babies, you guys have heard about the Beanie Baby thing? Just it was at the time, it was like a $3 toy. And pretty soon some of them were selling for literally thousands of dollars because they only made a certain number of each one. Yes, sir. I know, aren't they beautiful? Yeah. We can add you too. Okay, all right. Find a different word, okay? Then, oh my dear God is a better expression. Oh, your dear what? Okay, all right. Okay, here we go. So now, some of those people had bought land. What else do people speculate in? James, what else do people speculate in? Close your computer. What else do people speculate in? Like talking to a teddy bear. What do people buy hoping it'll go up? Come on, man, you know these. No, nobody buys used shoes for much. Just shoes like what kind of shoes? Be more specific. Certain kinds of athletic shoes, yes, they can buy and resell. Give me another one.
Toilet paper.
Actually, yeah, that's a very good one. When COVID started, toilet paper, people bought just pallets full of toilet paper to try to resell it. Hand sanitizer was big. Oh, absolutely. Baseball, basketball. Baseball was the biggest and more original one, but yeah, you can have a certain card that may be worth a lot. What'll play?
Back then, furs.
Furs, yeah. Rare coins, absolutely. One more. I don't know, maybe. Mask, probably. Okay, we're done with COVID things. We don't need to list them all, yes?
Shrek.
What?
Shrek.
No, nobody bought Shrek. Okay, here we go. Hey, guys, you're being recorded. Please don't be rude for socially unacceptable. Yes, ma'am. A speculator is someone who buys a good hoping to sell it for more later. People speculate in the stock market is speculation. They buy a stock thinking it'll go up. Gold, silver, corn, wheat, rye, oats, alfalfa, solar panels, anything that can be bought and sold. If somebody says, geez, there's going to be something happening where this is going to be much more valuable. So, okay. And if they said, no, you can't go past this line. There were already people over there. Remember, Daniel Boone had gone through, so we already have people moving over there. And the British government says, no, not going to happen. There's a new mood in the country, in North America, in the British colonies. And it is, we can defend ourselves. See, Pontiac's Rebellion was a big Native American uprising, and the colonists put that down by themselves. They didn't ask the British government for help, no British soldiers, no British Navy, just the colonists put it down. So they said, wait, back when we had to worry about the French, we needed the British Army, we needed the British government. Everybody look up here for just a second. Remember, they now have the Floridas too. So back when the Spanish were down here, we needed the British Navy. We needed the British Army. But the French and the Spanish are gone. We don't need them anymore. The only possibility of an enemy we really have is the natives, and we just showed we could take care of ourselves there. So we can defend ourselves. Now this one is important. Don't get confused by it. Simple, but not easy. They said trade is the domain of Parliament, but taxes are our domain. So let me take this one step at a time. Parliament, remember, was like the Congress of Britain, the people that make the laws. And they said, okay, we agree we're colonies, and colonies are made for the good of the mother country. So we get it that the British government says, this is who you can trade with, and this is how you can trade. That makes sense to us. But taxes, the domain means something a person is in control of. But taxes are our domain. They're going back to their natural rights idea of God gave people life, liberty, and property. Our money is our property. The government just take our money because, and this is huge, this is enormous, because there were a couple of million British citizens living over here, and they had 0 representatives in Parliament. They had not a single vote in making the laws that would charge them taxes. And they said, no, that's no good.
And aren't they a lot bigger than England itself?
No.
Really?
No. I mean, geographically, yes. Population-wise, no. What's that? They had no elected representative in Parliament. James, you make a lovely bear. That's just really nice.
It's supposed to be a lovely welcome.
Yeah, I think that. All right, sweetheart, would you go ahead and pause that or stop that? Go ahead and stop it.
Bye.